In 2021, Russian climber Natalia Nagovitsina became a legend in the mountaineering world for a single, defiant choice. High on Khan Tengri, she refused a direct order to save herself, staying by her husband's side until the end. She looked death in the face and said, "I will not go." 4 years later, on the even deadlier slopes of Pobeda Peak, where lives had already been lost that very day, the mountain showed no mercy, and this time the roles were reversed. Natalia wasn't the one making a choice to stay. She was lying broken in a tent over 7,000 meters in altitude, watching her teammates descend without her. Over the next 10 days, there were attempted rescues. A climber friend died trying to save her, and there was a helicopter crash filled with rescue personnel. Only drones could reach Natalia, perhaps giving her some hope that she might be saved. This is a story of the cruel irony of the mountains. A story about a woman who wouldn't leave, knowing her husband was not going to survive, and then how she herself was left behind with a broken ankle, stranded at over 7,000 meters on a lonely, distant mountain. I first learned of Natalia Nagovitsina in an article on Explorer's Web by the talented writer Chris Annapurna. Climber stranded for a week on Pobeda Peak, critical rescue mission underway. It mapped out the details of a gut-wrenching and critical rescue mission unfolding on Pobeda Peak, the highest mountain in the Tian Shan in Kyrgyzstan near the border of China at 7,439 meters or 24,406 feet. Anna Payanova of Mountain.ru had earlier reported that the 47-year-old Natalia Nagovitsina of Russia said that she had broken her leg on August 12th while descending from the summit of Pobeda. Her climbing partner had given her first aid and had to descend in order to try and go get more help to bring her down to safety. By the time of the article, Nagovitsina had been stranded already for 10 days at over 7,000 meters. It seemed highly unlikely that there would be any success in saving her. And ironically, those who descended, since they knew where she was, they decided to take with them the only radio, so she had no means of communicating with those below. But a drone flyover on August 19th, it was proof that she was still alive and in her tent. You can see her waving here. This footage is absolutely heartbreaking. And I just want you to know, before we go any further, I want to prepare you. This story does not have a happy ending. It shows you the cruel irony of the mountains. Mountains just don't care. They can give so much, but they can take so much away. And Natalia, who had 4 years earlier stayed with her dying husband high upon Khan Tengri, a nearby and notoriously ferocious mountain, had already lost so much and was about to lose even more while the world watched and rescuers tried everything to reach her. In a minute, I'm going to show you just how unlikely and essentially impossible it is to rescue anyone from Pobeda Peak at over 7,000 meters. It's never happened before. And what's really ironic is that Pobeda stands for victory. And this is a mountain that people who have climbed K2 have said that it is a more difficult mountain to climb than K2. They said that this mountain is harder and by far more dangerous than K2, the Savage Mountain.
So that's what made K2 difficult, and the higher altitude without oxygen made it a little more difficult. But Pobeda, we had no fixed lines, a lot colder, windier. So I think Pobeda was much more difficult.
In this story, we've been following climbers who are under this undue pressure at altitude, and it's something that many people don't really understand about what happens physiologically at altitude. There is only a limited amount of time that people can function well up there, and the lack of oxygen, even a little cut on your finger, will take sometimes days upon days to heal. You lose your appetite, and it's even hard staying hydrated. But people need to take care of themselves at sea level as well, not just on an expedition like this. And when we get really busy, it's easy to let things go. Easy to ignore the little health problems that pop up and we don't take care of and just hope that they go away. And if you don't have a regular doctor that you trust and you've seen for years and are putting off going to the walk-in clinic because it costs twice as much or so much more than a regular doctor visit, I think I might have a solution for you. It's called ZocDoc, today's sponsor. ZocDoc helps you quickly find the doctor that's right for you. And I mean really fast. It's all online. You can stop putting off what you've needlessly been procrastinating and check that doctor's appointment off your list. ZocDoc is a free website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors so you can find the right doctor for you. It lets you see doctor's appointment openings. You can choose a time that works for you, and then it lets you book it instantly with a click. Appointments made through ZocDoc happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even score same-day appointments. ZocDoc has over 150,000 providers across every specialty: primary care, dental, eye care, skin care, even travel medicine, where going away on a trek or a climb to a faraway country requires vaccinations or unique meds. ZocDoc is the one-stop shop for all your healthcare needs, and it's completely free. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/Everest Mystery. It's linked in the description to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. Use ZocDoc today and make the right call to the right doctor for you. Now back to that epic story in Kyrgyzstan. To understand the horror of Natalia's death in 2025, we have to go back to 2021, to a mountain called Khan Tengri. Natalia, she was there with her husband, Sergei Nagovitsina. Together, they made a strong team. So Natalia was no stranger to high altitude mountains. At 6,900 meters on Khan Tengri, disaster struck. Earlier in the day, as they were making their way up, Sergei had complained of a stomach ailment, and they thought maybe it was the food he had been eating. So they decided that for a while they'd sit to see if it passed, and they would rest a little bit. And then Sergei began to feel a little bit better, and with Natalia leading the way, Sergei one rope pitch behind, and she kept turning to stop and look back on her husband Sergei, and he was like, go, go, everything's fine. But finally she stopped. He was going so slowly, they decided to stop and have a cup of tea just to check things out, to make sure it was okay to move forward. And again, finally, after resting and determining that maybe things weren't as bad as he had originally felt, they kept going, this time with Sergei in the lead. And only a short while later, after maybe 2 more pitches, Sergei stopped. And when Natalia reached him a few minutes later, that's when she said exactly these words: a tragedy happened, he was paralyzed, and she said his speech was slow, as if his tongue wouldn't work. Sergei had collapsed, likely a stroke or cerebral edema. He couldn't sit, he couldn't move, he couldn't speak. And this is where the nightmare began. Natalia was alone with her husband paralyzed high up on the mountain, not too far below 7,000 meters and a long way from any help. And Natalia called down to base camp below, asking if there could be some help from a rescue crew. And a doctor down below asked Natalia to lower Sergei to a level place. But now you got to understand, Sergei was twice as big as Natalia. She's tiny, and she had a very, very difficult time and was finally able to get him at least to a somewhat level place, unable to dig because there was no snow. It was just rock and ice. And it must have been pretty obvious to her that if she stayed with him, that her chances of surviving were equally slim to those of her husband Sergei, who was fading fast. And Natalia was not going to leave him. She refused to leave Sergei's side. And as you can hear, there's a radio call from base camp. It's in Russian, and it asks her, "So your decision is to spend the night next to him?" And Natalia's reply, "I will not leave my husband. He is completely helpless." That moment right there is what made her famous, legendary, right? To stay beside your husband when you know he's not going to survive, and you know that by staying with him, your chances are not too good either. And this is one of the first rules above 7,000 meters on a mountain. It is almost impossible to save or move a non-ambulatory climber, and especially given the size difference of Natalia and her husband Sergei. But Natalia broke that rule. She decided to stay. She tried to keep her husband as comfortable as possible, even made it through the entire night. And she said that in the morning, when the sun came, that Sergei was actually able to put his arms around her, and thankful that they made it through the night, maybe hoping that a rescue was possible to save his life. And in this interview that was done a year later in this absolutely incredible documentary, I'll put a link to in the description below, Natalia says that she herself was afraid that she would become completely disabled herself by getting frostbite and losing the use of her hands and arms and toes. And as he started becoming delirious, Sergei would ask for this drink called kvass, and it's a Russian drink, and it's mildly alcoholic, and it's a fermented drink, and I had never heard of it before. I had to look it up, but that's all he wanted. And he kept saying, "Why can't we go home? Why can't we just go home? Please get me some kvass." And ultimately, Sergei died on Khan Tengri, and Natalia survived. And she returned a year later to bolt a memorial plaque to the rock and to bring Sergei his long-awaited drink of kvass. And you'd think most people would walk away from high-altitude climbing at this point in time, but Natalia, she didn't. She dug her heels in and she went back. Pobeda Peak, 7,439 meters. The name means victory, but the statistics spell death. Historically, for every 4 climbers that make it to the summit of the mountain, 1 dies. And here's probably the most staggering statistic of all. No climber has ever been rescued from above 7,000 meters. And so if you break a leg on the summit of Pobeda Peak, you are pretty much out of luck. And as you look at this photograph, most climbers climbing Pobeda use the normal route, which is over on the right side here, and that gets them to what looks like it could be the summit, but it's not. It's a little bit lower than the peak on the left side of this ridge, and climbers have to traverse along that ridge. And from the looks of the photo, you think, okay, that can't be too far. Well, that ridge is 4 kilometers long, 2.5 miles in distance over corniced ridges, snow, steep drop-offs on each side. And when you consider that climbers on the north side of Mount Everest, from the first step, now look at this photograph here, they have to go about 1.6 or so kilometers, about a mile in distance. And that's, of course, well over 8,000 meters, but on Pobeda Peak, it's more than twice as long as that. And when you're on the summit, tired, getting back down just to descend to lower altitude can take hours and hours. So check out this drone shot that flies right over the summit ridge on Pobeda. If you have trouble on the summit, you might as well be on the moon. A rescue is not going to happen. You have a long, long way to go, baby. And well, I think you can see where I'm going with this. And another statistic is that over 80 people have lost their lives on Pobeda Peak. And so in August of 2025, Natalia is back there on Pobeda Peak in the Tian Shan mountain range. And she's not a guided client. She's part of an independent team of 4. Herself, a Russian climber named Roman Mokrinsky, a German named Gunter Sigmund, and an Italian, Luca Sinigaglia. And they summit. They make it to the top. Their dream is achieved. But on the descent from the summit is the beginning of the catastrophe. Natalia falls and breaks her leg. In an instant, she becomes exactly what her husband was 4 years earlier, basically immobile and helpless. So in this instance, Natalia's teammate, Roman Mokrinsky, he gives her first aid after she breaks her leg, puts a splint on that broken leg, and even have a moment to take a photograph here. And what he ends up doing is secures her in a tent in a relatively protected area, in an alcove beneath a huge boulder, where, believe it or not, there is a frozen body of someone who died there in 2015. Natalia's right next to this person, and Roman is going to leave her there and descend down the mountain with the hopes that help can be brought up to her to rescue her. So 2 men try the impossible. The Italian, Luca Sinigaglia, and the German, Gunter Sigmund, they climb back up and reach Natalia on August 13th, a day later, and they bring her a sleeping bag, a stove, some cooking gas. These men essentially gave her a fighting chance to survive until rescuers could reach her and bring her down the mountain. But mountains never reward heroism. During his descent, after helping Natalia, Luca collapses with cerebral edema. A blizzard made it all but impossible to keep moving. He dies frostbitten and hypothermic on August 16th. Luca himself was left in a cave and is still there now. And now this is the part that just gives me chills. On August 16th, a drone is sent up and flies over her tent, and she's alive. There she is. She waves to the drone. That must have given her so much hope and thinking, it's possible. If they know I'm here, that must mean they're coming to get me. That's a sign. And then again, a few days later, on August 19th, the drone returns. She's still alive. And she's in her tent, 7,150 meters, broken leg, waiting, probably feeling even more hopeful that rescuers are close. And think about it, in 2021, she spent that single awful night with her husband, Sergei, hoping and that maybe he would be saved. And then also on August 19th, the Kyrgyz Ministry of Defense began evacuating climbers and tourists and rescue personnel from base camps, not only on Pobeda Peak, but nearby Khan Tengri and even another mountain a little bit further away. Dozens upon dozens of climbers because the weather was so bad. People's lives were in danger, and meanwhile, Natalia is stranded up high upon the mountain. One has to wonder, was she thinking about her husband, Sergei? And on August 20th, a four-man team left base camp and they got up to Camp 2 and were relatively in position to make a stab at going and getting Natalia down. However, they were forced back themselves by horrible weather, blizzards and bitter cold, so they descended back to base camp. One of the organizers of the rescue, he said, if she's alive still to this time, he said, I'll believe in a miracle. And then he said, if she is saved, then I'll believe in a miracle twice over. And so ultimately, bad weather had the last word. And it also canceled another planned helicopter rescue mission wherein previously a helicopter had tried to go up and do a rescue of Natalia but crashed. And by now she was stranded up there for over 10 days at over 7,000 meters. No doubt her food and water must have long since run out. And then fast forward to August 27th, 2 weeks after Natalia had broken her leg, they flew a thermal imaging drone up to search for any signs of life at Natalia's camp and anywhere on the mountain in the event that she tried to get herself down the mountain. And the thermal camera showed nothing, no heat, no movement. The storms had all but destroyed the tent. Natalia Nagovitsina died as she lived. She died and lived on her own terms, in the thin air of altitude. Some will call it a tragedy, but Natalia knew that above 7,000 meters, there are no guarantees. There's only you, the mountain, and the choices that you make. She stayed with her husband, Sergei, when she could have left him in 2021. And then it was her turn. She waited in 2025, but nobody could get to her. And so now the hopes are that in the spring of 2026, there will be an opportunity for rescue crews or personnel to do a retrieval of not only Natalia's remains, but of her friend Luca Sinigalia, who are now alone on the mountain. So what do you think about this story? I hope you'll take a moment to leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed this video, I hope that you'll take a moment to subscribe to Everest Mystery. And also take a look at the member section where there is a ton of exclusive content for those who like to do a deeper dive. I mean, hours and hours of content. And also check out everestmystery.com. There's a lot of merchandise, glassware, and in the top you'll see a button where it says apparel. There's sweatshirts and hats, something for everybody. So please check it out. And in the meantime, do a good deed. Don't ask for anything in return. Make the world a better place, one tiny step at a time. Peace be with you.